Okay, my friends, we have a lot of ground to cover in today's daily brief, so I'm going to go rapidly. I mean, even I'm saying I'm going to go rapidly, so buckle up. 1,330 Russians off the battlefield, 12 tanks, 35 armored combat vehicles, 59 artillery systems, 73 vehicles and fuel tanks. This is a pretty impressive number. It's very high, even for the high range that it's been in. And that's because the Russians just keep coming, especially in the eastern front line in Donetsk around Prokrovsk. On the night of August 16th, 2024, Russian forces launched an attack using 3 Iskander ballistic missiles, 3 Shahed drones, and 2 unidentified drones. All of these drones came from the Kursk region, which is interesting. All the drones were shot down, the missiles came through, and so I don't like to see the small number of drones because that usually means that they're saving up for a big day. By the way, if you haven't subscribed before, I do these kinds of stories every day. I do 3 big stories in the evening. I do the daily brief, which is what you're watching in the morning. I just started a segment on Today in Cold War history, and so just trying to connect the dots between what happened before and what's happening now. Please consider subscribing if you haven't. Okay, Russian forces continue offensive operations near Chasiv Yar. This was yesterday, late last night, August 15th, and reported advance near Toretsk, but there were no confirmed changes to the frontline sector. The Euromaidan press is carrying this ISW assessment that Russian military is prioritizing Donetsk advances, trying to push toward Prokrovsk over defensive Kursk. It's kind of unbelievable. Excuse me. It's kind of unbelievable because like the Russians are being invaded and they're not really that interested in defending their own land over continuing the attack toward Prokrovsk. Okay. Last night, Ukrainian drones attacked the occupied Crimea. So this was Ukraine actually offensively attacking in Sevastopol and near the Kerch Bridge. The video reportedly shows a fire, and I'm not showing video. I'm just going to, show the still here. Fire where apparently a Panzer S1 sat. So that's what they were going after there. In occupied Crimea, explosions were heard in several cities, including Kerch, Feodosia. Feodosia is that little port where they sunk, I don't remember, a couple of ships. Sevastopol. The Crimean bridge was closed for over 5 hours. Reportedly, a boat in the Black Sea, the ferry crossing at the Kerch port, and a Panther S-1 air system were hit. Additionally, drones targeted Belgorod region, where Russian forces reported strikes. Again, same thing with the area around the Crimean Bridge, but the Crimean Bridge was not hit, to my knowledge. Drones attacked Crimea. According to unconfirmed report, the port of Kerch came under attack. Fires broke out during the night. Okay, now, there are 2,000 vehicles reportedly stuck in a traffic jam on the Kerch Bridge due to a reported attack on Russian-occupied Crimea. Now, I understand if you're trying to get out of Crimea, but trying to get into Crimea, I don't understand for the life of me. Okay, Russia has moved several thousand soldiers from the front line to the Kerch region. However, they're not sending their best and brightest that are over around Donetsk trying to attack toward Pokrovsk. They're sending them from other places, and some of the reports are that those lines are very thin now. Russia launched 8 air targets. I talked about this earlier. 8 air targets from Kursk Oblast. Ukraine downs 5 drones. So the attacks are coming from Kursk, and this is important, and it's bizarre because the U.S. is still not allowing American weaponry to be used to attack, even though these drones are coming from Kursk attacking Ukraine. Residents of Sutsa in Russia's Kerch region casually shop in stocked grocery stores despite Ukraine's forces now having full control of the town. No one touches us, the residents are saying. No one touches us. The Ukrainian military told us to live peacefully. That's a quote. Okay. In contrast to this, when the Russians came to any Ukrainian town, destroyed it, and then you can just read for yourself because of, YouTube censors. I don't want to say anything more than this. Right? I mean, it's terrible what the Russians have done, and it's amazing the difference between what the Ukrainians are doing. But what the Russians are doing here in Russia's Kerch region, Ukrainian soldiers are trying to figure out why these Russian women are looting homes in their own country. Hmm. One of the Russian propagandists proposed to shut down the internet in Russia's border regions. Military censorship should be introduced, and communication via the internet should be banned, like just making it extra hard for the Russians who live there. Well, I get the effect on the Ukrainians, but still, I don't think they wanted broadcast into the rest of the world what's going on. Okay, Russia constructs fortifications 50 kilometers from the border as Ukraine incursion in Kursk Oblast deepens. So instead of coming and meeting them where they are, they're actually going to push the lines way back and develop their defensive lines and kind of cede that territory to the Ukrainians. I just find that hard to believe. And then there's a little bit more in that particular article here. Following military strategy of striking with their best weapon at the enemy's weakest point in the eastern and northwestern directions, Ukrainian forces are focused on encircling the settlement of Kornevo. Okay. And that brings me right back to the art of war. Attack them where they're unprepared, appear where you're not expected. That's exactly what the Ukrainians have done in Kursk. And as prizes, they've gotten all kinds of interesting things, like Ukraine continues to freely gather Russia's most advanced military technology from Putin's defeated forces in the Kerch region. And when I say defeated forces, there's not much of a defeat. I mean, there is fighting and there is defeating, but for the most part, it's just surrender and like not fighting. The 2,000 plus prisoners of war have been taken so far. Okay, and Kornevo, we just mentioned, in the Kornevo area of the Kerch region, the story repeated itself from just a few days ago. A Russian convoy is attacked, and there are many dead. Like they just keep driving in columns. So that's part of the defeating, but there's not as much of that as there seems to be just surrendering. Okay, this guy here he's been in the all over on Twitter and Telegram and things along those lines. He's the commander of the Akhmat unit. That's the Chechens. He was offended by a post by a Russian blogger in the Operation Z Telegram channel about a report of Western journalists which they had filmed in Sutsa. The blogger asked what the commander of the Chechen troops thought about it. Since there was nothing to answer, the Chechen TikTok battalion commander, they call him a TikTok battalion commander because they post all these videos of them just shooting, like I saw one, he's shooting down a railroad tracks at absolutely nothing, just, trying to look tougher, or shooting with two rifles simultaneously, as if people actually do that. And so they're these TikTok warriors. And his reply was, your questioning apparatus hasn't grown up to ask me anything. And not a rooster like you should ask me anything. Now, rooster is some kind of pejorative, some kind of slang term for something. I'm not exactly familiar with what. If you know, put it in the comments below. I know my job. I do it. I fight, you understand, and I do everything to prevent roosters like you from sowing panic in our ranks, in the ranks of the defense ministry fighters among civilians, he said, but he later deleted the post. But he's getting a black eye because they're just dragging him through the mud here. He's getting dragged by Russian military bloggers for their cowardice. Chechens fled or surrendered at first contact on the Kursk border, even though they were acting all tough and showing these videos and TikTok where they were just this force to behold. He's unlikely to live to see 2025. We'll see what happens to him. Worth mentioning, Ukraine also lost the HIMARS system. I mean, this kind of thing happens. They take losses too along the way. Not much of them were destroyed or damaged until now, but it was in the fight, so that's what you would expect. NATO assesses Russia's response to the invasion in Kursk region. Russia has shown, quote, a rather slow and scattered response, unquote, to the Ukrainian offensive in the Kursk region. The reaction is due to a lack of understanding of who should be responsible for the fighting inside Russia, as well as a lack of available troops. So, yeah, the available troops, it takes a while to get them there, but the authoritarian system has not really done well to coordinate command because Putin doesn't really know who to trust, and so he puts these overlapping layers of authority of people who's in charge, and then ultimately no one's in charge. By now, it should be clear to Belousov that not only were Shoigu's ministers, or Shoigu's MOD financial books cooked, but the new laws, the reorganizations, and the national defense plans on his 12-year watch to help security services to coordinate better with the military remained stuck at mostly the conceptual stage. He didn't really do much. He was bilking the system. He was corrupt. And that's really a positive thing for Ukraine that he was as corrupt as he was. Meanwhile, the Belarusian defense minister stated that there's a high likelihood of armed provocations from Ukraine. So he's saber rattling in order to distract. But uh, at this point, the Belarusians are a paper tiger. They've given so much of their equipment to Russia. What do they have left? Infantry? I mean, they don't really have much. They're more bark than bite. Okay. The Defense Ministry of Canada. Canada allows Ukraine to use weapons and equipment provided on the territory of Russia. They provided Ukraine with Leopard 2A4 tanks, several dozen armored combat support vehicles, hundreds of armored patrol vehicles, as well as several M777 howitzers. But in the United States, we're still asking, why are long-range strikes on Ukraine still viewed as escalatory? And the answer comes back that, we're worried about escalation. That's where we are. Okay, that's pretty much it. I'm just going to leave you with no particular reason, posting a photo of a wheat field. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.